Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-A Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
What is up? Happy pre-Thanksgiving week. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We are loaded, despite the fact that we have, as the fall sports equinox winds down, the intensity of what we have left is going up. We've got football to talk about. We've got basketball to talk about. Kyle Nash is going to join us a little bit later. We got volleyball heading down the stretch. We've got soccer in the NCAA College Cup. Lots of stuff to talk about, Eric. How are we going to fit this all in?
That's by not sleeping, obviously, or having a morning kickoffs to give us more time. That helps.
We'll talk about. Let's open with that. UCF taking on Navy, of course, at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Make sure that you bring your breakfast tailgate items for that. So let's go ahead and dive right in. After UCF got what I think, Eric, was their biggest win of the season to this point in New Orleans against Tulane, who was all alone in first place in the American. That game was essentially for control of the conference, and UCF gets the 38-31 win in rather windy conditions in New Orleans. But JRP was back. UCF gets that all-important dub in a fashion that I think was really encouraging to see. They ran the ball well, especially in the fourth quarter, and that sets up the following situation for UCF football. 2 games to go. Home against 3-6 Navy, at 1-9 South Florida. If UCF wins those 2 games, they will host the conference championship game on December the 3rd. So the situation is laid out for the Knights quite clearly, but that also comes with its own challenges and its own pressures. And I guess that's where we should start right there, Eric, is there now a different kind of pressure on this team that now that they are in the driver's seat in the American with 2 opponents that they will be favored against
significantly
left on the schedule. But this is, I know you laugh at me all the time when I have this sort of paranoid feeling about this kind of stuff, but you just never know what you're going to get.
Well, the Navy game in particular is a tricky game because it's unique, their style of play. It's going to be a quick game, a lot of short possessions. You're not going to have the normal amount of possessions that you have in a normal game because Navy is very good at shortening the game. So you got to be efficient, got to be better in the red zone offensively. Cannot waste possessions against Navy. You don't want to play from behind against Navy either. So you got to get off to a good start. You got an 11 a.m. kick at home. It is senior day. I think that'll help. But look, you're in a great spot. If you would have told Gis Malzahn and UCF at the beginning of the year, you've got a chance to host a conference championship game, and to do that, you got to beat Navy at home and win at South Florida. You take it. You sign up on that 100 times out of 100. So it's a very manageable situation. The line of scrimmage was dominated Tulane. They're going to have to do that against Navy in this game, I think, to be the key. And, to build that confidence for John Rice Plumlee, who I think has a chance to not only be the quarterback this year, but be the quarterback next year. And I think that's a big part of why he is the quarterback, because I think he gives him the best chance to possibly win this year and has him the best chance to win next year. I think Gus is playing for this year and next year with JRP, and it might pay off in the long run if they get to the Cotton Bowl.
Well, this is going to be pretty interesting here coming into this game. UCF is a 16.5-point favorite. 74% of the money is on Navy plus the 16.5, according to OddsShark. Over under is 53, which is relatively low overall. But, you mentioned JRP. We saw what UCF was able to do, and this is one of the what Gus has been doing, is revealing new parts of the offense at key times to the opponent's defense, but also matching up well. Last week against Tulane, UCF came into that game. We saw it actually fairly early. Tulane's strength on defense was their secondary, their pass defense. They're the top pass defense in the American. And the idea for UCF was, we'll try and loosen them up a little bit. The bread and butter is going to come at you eventually. It's going to be running the ball. We saw that with JRP. He came back from being out a game and a half and broke the school record for rushing yards in a single game by a quarterback in the first 10 minutes of the game. And that was key, right? We knew that Tulane could be had on the ground, and that's exactly what UCF was able to do. This game's a little bit different, though, Eric, because I was going through my stats to try and scout this thing out, because I got my piece that I read about Know Your Foe that's coming out this week. Navy is all over the place on the rankings. They are first in the American in rushing defense. They only allow 86 yards a game on the ground, but they give up 274.3 through the air. That's 116th in the country. So to me, the avenue to attack them is through the air. And if you're going to, people are always concerned about JRP throwing the ball. I get it. But if you're going to build some confidence throwing the ball as we head toward the hopefully the conference championship and the bowl game, what better way to do it against a team that's 116th in the country at defending the pass?
Sure. Now, some of those stats you got to be careful with. A lot of teams try to throw early on Navy because, again, you're not going to have a lot of possessions. You also have a situation where Navy tries to really take out the run. They put a lot of people on the box. Their secondary is probably their weak spot, too, from watching them play. So, but you're right. They got to throw the ball. He's going to have to throw the ball. JRP is going to have to win a game at some point with his arm. I don't know if it's necessarily this Saturday. I think it might be the conference championship game. Definitely the New Year's Six bowl game when they play an actual quality opponent. Maybe. I don't know. Penn State, Washington ain't that great. So I think it's going to be, we'll see how he, can get to that level of throwing the ball. But again, if the line plays as well as they did, it's not going to matter because they have holes, man. They just ran all over Tulane. The offensive line did a heck of a job there creating the holes for them. So this is a physicality game. Who wins the battle in the trenches in this game will win this game. I think we could throw all the numbers we want. This is a really simple game. Who controls the line of scrimmage? Can UCF contain the Navy running game? You're not going to shut them down. They're going to run a lot, but contain them.
They are going to run in spite of themselves.
Right. Can you hold them at 3 yards a carry, or are you getting gashed like you got gashed last year? And then also you got to be sound on the special teams. What cost UCF the matchup against Navy last year? Their special teams had multiple breakdowns, turnovers. Those are things that killed you, and that's how Navy was able to beat them last year.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. JRP right now this year, 2,000 yards passing, and he's coming up close on 1,000 yards rushing. He's at 700 yards rushing right now, but he has a couple more games like that. He's going to have a 2,000, 1,000 season. I agree with you. I would like to see JRP possibly win the game with his arm if, Navy decides to stack the box, take advantage of those numbers. This is the other thing. This is a different Navy team than we're used to. The rules changes, and Drew talked about this before. The rules changes regarding blocking below the waist, I think, have really hurt Navy overall, in terms of what they like to do. The other thing, though, I wanted to, run this by you as well. Let's give Navy's defense credit. They, so far this season have been stout against the run in keeping with their game plan. 10th against, well, like we said, 85 points, but also, offensively, like I said, they are going to run in spite of themselves. What is the situation for this defense? UCF's defensive line has been very strong, but I always have concerns when we play Navy, because remember when we talked to Trey Neal a couple years ago about the 2017 team, and he said like they were never the same after they played Navy because they do all the cut blocking and it's the only way that they can run this triple O thing. And the next week they gave up 33 points to Austin P, even though they scored 73, right? And Navy just has the ability to tire you out up front, right?
Well, and you got to be disciplined defensively because you're not used to playing that scheme that Navy runs in practice. So it's something you only practice once a year for. You do get beat up a little bit physically. The good news is UCF has a bye week after this game, so they don't have to worry about any opponents.
Don't go saying that.
No, but in all seriousness, they don't have to play Black Friday. So they're going to get an extra day. So actually playing on Saturday night is going to help them there. Not to mention they're playing.
Well, let's not call it a bye week because
all right, a high school team. You're playing a high school team.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm pretty confident that Popka can give USF a game or beat them. But anyway, look, Navy's going to play hard. I do think Navy can. The nightmare scenario is if you're in the fourth quarter and it's a one possession game, because you will feel pressure. You asked about whether they will feel I don't think players feel the pressure until you get to like the fourth quarter and it's a one possession game. It's like, oh boy, we better figure this out. Because again, the nervous thing about playing Navy is they literally could have a possession at the 12-minute mark of the fourth quarter and you may not get the ball back for 7 minutes, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The game goes quick. The equivalent was when you played those great Princeton teams in college basketball. Remember the Pete Carroll teams? They would just eat the clock, the shot clock, the backdoor you. Next thing you know, there's 2 minutes left in the game. Like, wait a minute, it's a 1-point game? What?
Right.
We just started.
How are we down 3 points with 2 minutes to go? And they're just going to burn. That they're going to burn a minute and a half of that 2 minutes left on the clock.
Right. And that's the danger in this game is if you let them hang around, Nate, all of a sudden it's like, man, how do we catch up to these guys? Can we get a stop? We have to score. That's to me, that's the danger in this game.
Yeah. So, is at 11 a.m. Quite a bit of consternation in the fan base about that kickoff time. Your thoughts?
I love it. Can we do this more often? I would go to more games if we had 11 a.m. kicks. Look, here's the thing that's overrated. What's the difference between 11 a.m. and noon? 1 hour.
1 hour.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you not go to a noon game? And I think in a way, this is kind of a prelude to what you're going to get in the Big 12, because you're going to get more noon games when you're in the Big 12 conference. So you might as well get used to the early time. This is the slot that the American has this week. That's their primary slot. Part of it is, I think, because ESPN, what ESPN's trying to do this weekend is they're trying to fill up as much football on ESPN, ESPN2, and ABC because you have college basketball starting. So a lot of the college basketball this weekend is going to be on the less, quote, ESPNU or an SEC network, AC. So the slots that normally would be available for football, some of those are not going to be available because of basketball. So as a result, ESPN2, for example, this weekend is doing 4 games in one day. They usually do 3.
Yeah, so quadruple header.
Right.
Wow.
So as a result, UCF gets the 11 a.m. slot. I actually think it's a positive. There's not a lot of football games in that slot. The big threat, you're going against College game day, but whatever. Game day's 3 hours. You could flip the channel. And I actually think they might. I'm really interested to see if they draw better numbers than they have the last couple of games, which aired at 3:30 on ESPN2. The Tulane game drew 368,000 viewers. Memphis was 331. That's not great. I actually think this is a better, from an eyeball standpoint on television, it's a better slot than 3:30, because 3:30 you're usually going against the marquee SEC game. You're going against some other big games. I think they might draw pretty well. Plus, Navy always draws pretty well.
They have a national audience.
Correct. So I think they might draw well. And by the way, it's your last regular season home game. It's a 1 hour difference. I don't think it's as big of a deal as others make it out to be. But I understand. Look, college football fans, not just UCF, but college football fans like the night games. They like to tailgate the whole day. I get it. But like I said, I personally like it selfishly because I'm out of there by 3:00 and I can still have a full day. It's pretty nice. Better than being there at 3 a.m. like you guys were for the Boise game last year.
Well, we had to stay that late. That wasn't our fault. Like,
right.
I mean, we didn't get. I mean, it wasn't our fault that that the thunderstorm happened, right? But this is a little bit different. So UCF is the first kickoff of the day. Get this. Here's your full TV schedule. ABC has a triple header. Fox Network, triple header. Quadruple header on ESPN. Quadruple header on ESPN2. Triple header on ESPNU. Quadruple header on FS1. Triple header on SEC Network. Triple header on Pac-12 Network. Quadruple header on CBS Sports Network. It's a busy day.
Well, the other thing is, too, because it's the next to last week of the regular season, there's very few teams, if any, have bye weeks. So
yeah,
this is actually – so these next 2 weeks, you're packed as far as a lot of football games. The difference is next week you have Black Friday that you could spread out some of those games. You don't have that luxury this week.
But we had for example, we had 2 MAC games on Tuesday and 3 on Wednesday. And it was wild. Like some of these games, we have only one game on Thursday, but that's because the NFL kind of eats everything up. Believe it or not, it's an AAC game between SMU and Tulane. Friday, you have an AAC game between South Florida and Tulsa at 9 o'clock.
Oh,
and then a 9:45.
I'll be watching something else.
Yeah. And then a 9:45 kick on FS1 between San Diego State and New Mexico.
Have fun, Mountain West. Hey, the Mountain West, you exist.
Our boy Dan Helly actually calling that game, a former Channel 9 sports anchor here in town. So. Now the one other thing I want to get to before is the college football playoff rankings.
Oh boy.
I know, but UCF comes in at number 20, only 1 spot ahead of Tulane at 21. And Cincinnati is now in the top 25, but lurking at 25. And remember, which, you have emphasized, we both have emphasized, remember, it's the top ranked group of 5 conference champ that goes to the New Year's Six Bowl. I think that this was kind of a very, a very convenient ranking for the committee, shall we say, to put the top 3 teams in the American, all of which, by the way, are tied officially in the ranking, in the standings, even though UCF has the tiebreaker over Cincinnati and Tulane. All 3 of them in the top 25 as we head into the final 2 weeks. Remarkable how convenient that was.
Well, look, if you're Mike Oresco, you're smiling. I mean, they have lapped the field. Like, there is not even a whisper about anybody else outside of the American. There's no talk about.
I don't know who else you would. Yeah, I don't know who else.
Coastal Carolina has 1 loss, and nobody cares because they're irrelevant. Because the American is the SEC of the G5. They have a better TV deal than the Mountain West, that's for sure. Better deal than the Sun Belt, better deal than Conference USA, better deal. They are the league. And I know, people are going to say, are they going to take a hit? Of course they're going to take a hit losing UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. However, I still think they're going to be the heavy favorites in years to come with programs like SMU and Tulane and then some of the members they're bringing in. They are the team, the conference that will be the favorites every year to represent the league in the New Year's Six Bowl game and in the playoff. I think there's a significant gap in the leagues, and I don't think that's changing overnight. So if you're Mike Oresco, you're happy about that. As far as UCF's concerned, you just win, baby. Just win, as our good late friend Costa Seg advisor would say. Just win. You win out, you're going to Cotton Bowl. You don't win out, you're probably going to go to the Military Bowl or something like that. But so you win. It's in your control. That's what you want. And no, it doesn't matter that Florida State's ranked 19th. Doesn't matter. Florida State is not playing for the Cotton Bowl slot with UCF. All right, I understand it gets petty, trash talking, whatever. Doesn't matter. UCF, all they got to worry about, win out the next 3 games. You're going to the Cotton Bowl in New Year's 6 to play either a Penn State or a Washington or whoever.
And Florida State's going to the Belt Bowl.
No, they're going to they're going to one of the Cheesehead Bowls in Orlando, or the Gator Bowl. I did call the FSU jumping UCF though. I thought it should have happened last week. I don't know why it happened this week. It seems like we have delayed voting. I have no issues with it. Florida State did beat LSU, which probably looks pretty good win right now, and beat Louisville. So I have no issues with it, but it doesn't matter because UCF is not competing with FSU, as you brought up. They're competing with the Tulanes and Cincinnati. Take care of Navy, take care of South Florida.
Yep.
And then you're hopefully at that point, you're hosting the conference title game where you're going to be a favorite. Take care of that, and you're going to the Cotton Bowl. That's it. Simple. Yep. Don't have to worry about anything else.
Beat a team that you likely will have already beaten,
Probably Cincinnati or Tulane if you take care of business, correct?
Right. So, all right. And I do want to, as we wrap up segment 1 here, you did bring up one thing that I want to mention before we go. This has been a rough year for the Twitter mafia at UCF, and a lot of us and a lot of you who have, interacted with us and we interact together. We lost Lynn Cheek earlier this year. And then unexpectedly this past week, we lost James Reid. Cost Seg Advisor was his handle on Twitter. He was always very active, and he was very supportive of us right from the very beginning. Found us early, shared our content a lot of the time, had a lot of discussions with me, Eric, Drew, Kyle, a lot of us on social media, was always very supportive. I met James in person a couple times, and he was always so warm and friendly. And unfortunately, he passed away this past week, rather suddenly. It's hard to see. This is kind of the weird post-COVID world that we're in, right? I mean, it's a lot of us have interacted on social more so than in person, which is great because you meet new friends. But then all of a sudden, face is gone, and I'm going to miss James terribly. And I wanted to, thank him for the support that he gave our site, especially in the early times. Around as we were building up. When it was originally just you and me, Eric, right? And then Murph came on and James interacted with us and helped us out a lot. And James, we, wherever you may be, if you're listening, thank you for all you did for us. We will miss you always. And to his family, our hearts go out to them. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of fathom that, and but we hope that we hope that he knew how important he was to us. And
positive guy too, like always positive about all the UCF teams. Had those funny graphics he would post there with
he was a ninja in terms of creating photoshopping stuff, memes and GIFs and everything. He was great. He
was a one of a kind. Was always on our night shift shows, questions, and what's spooky for me is I literally had spoken to him 2 days before his passing. Like, we were talking about women's soccer and some debate back and forth, which won't get into on the soccer, which, by the way, we'll talk later. Women's soccer quieted some to kind of put up there and quieted some other people there. But anyway, but he was another example about being such a positive guy. He was supportive of softball. He went to the left field lounge last year for a few games. It was he was one of the top fans and really a great representation of a fan, the fan for UCF. And it was really weird. We honored him on night shift. We called the chat room on night shift in honor of him after him, and we'll continue to do that on night shift. My thoughts are with the family there and everybody. He left a heck of an impact, and the fact that a lot of people felt his loss tells you what a heck of a person he was and impact he had.
I saw him the last time I saw him in person, I believe, was at the Charge On tour in Oviedo, right down from my house. And it was good to see him there. We talked for a while and I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him a lot. I know you're going to miss him. We're all going to miss him very much. So James, we love you. We miss you. Thank you for the light and the joy that you brought to us, and tell Lynn we said hi. Right. We'll be right back. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
We are back on the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon along with you. Eric has dipped out for a little bit, so in his stead, the student of the game, Kyle Nash, is in the house. What's up, dude?
Hey, listen, the price of fame for Elo, he had business to handle. I get it. You know, all in good fun. I'm here, but listen, always an honor, joy, and privilege to bring it in at the Banneret. But by the way, it was a fun time also writing a preview for this game, because the real challenge, in my opinion, for Gis Malzahn as a coach is yet to actually come now that he's actually beaten Tulane in what could have been the toughest remaining game on the schedule, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this a little bit, because, like, interesting you use the term tough there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, like Eric and I talked about in the previous segment, Navy's 3-6, but one of the things I like to always say about Navy is they don't play football. They play some odd derivative of it, which, you know, it's talk to anyone who's played them, including, you know, I mentioned Eric, you know, we talked to Trey Neal about 2017. He said our defense was never the same after that Navy game because we were just so exhausted, and that's what they do to you. So
Jemias would tell you the same thing. He told me something like that when I actually interviewed him that year.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah. So we'll put it to you. I mean, Kyle, before we get to hoops, you were in the press conference with Coach Malzahn. What did he say about this game in terms of UCF's preparation for it? Because it's kind of unusual to play them this late in the year.
Right.
And this is the first game where UCF has a lot on the line.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, it's reminiscent of the last time Navy came to town, right? You know, that was the last time there was, I think, a noon start or earlier in the case of the 11 a.m. this weekend. Mm-hmm. So that's unique too. And he and Anthony Montalvo both cited that you got to have your technique 100% correct. But what Gus said that was particularly interesting to me was he had cited that they had peppered in time to practice for Navy throughout the year since the summer, the direct quote. And you could see more fully what he says if you check out the preview on the blackandgoldbanneret.com that dropped yesterday. So there's that. But the fact that now he didn't say this exactly because he's not going to something game plan, blah, blah. But what I kind of read from it is that they've been peppering in time throughout practices since, you know, summer. Hey, we got a little time. Let's look at the option. Let's play against it. And different teams have handled it different ways uniquely, right? Going back to 2017, Scott Frost actually suited up, you know, very appropriate that Timmy McLean, a mobile guy who's in there at the scout team, the USF transfer is in there to help provide the defense with that look as well.
Did they say that McLean was running the option for the scout team? And, you know,
Yeah. Brandon Helwig actually asked that question directly, and that was the response we got, is that he was a big part of the preparation process here. And, you know, I mentioned Montalvo specifically. Obviously, they're looking to avoid cut blocks, because I'll tell you what, if I'm Malzahn and I just got through a year last year that I did where I had a mash unit of guys, my defensive front being injured like they were last year, facing a group that's fond of cut blocking this late in the year is incredibly problematic. You know, maybe they could still win the USF game, but with a looming rematch potentially, if all goes well in the best case scenario of Cincinnati or Tulane, I want as many guys healthy up front as possible.
Yeah, that's the thing about playing them, is like, because they cut block, and I remember Trey talking with us about this all day. It's just up downs, basically, to try and, you know, you have to get down to protect your knees, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting for 3.5 hours, or however long the game lasts, because, you know, if Navy holds on to the ball, sometimes it goes rather quickly, as Eric and I were talking about. So, all right, well, that's interesting. So, yeah, kickoff will be 11 a.m. Saturday, UCF against Navy, senior day, and we'll be announcing the senior players as they come on out for one final time on the home field, at least in the regular season, heading into this 2-game stretch. And if UCF wins these last two games, I almost Freudian slip there and said last 2 home games. Some people are going to say that's home games.
Did you though, Jeff? Did
I? Good question. They win these last 2 games, they host a conference title game. So, all right. Speaking of hosting, let's move over to hoops, Kyle Nash, because you have been all over UCF men's and women's hoops to start. And hey, good starts for both squads, right? I want to start with the women's team since they actually played the most recently. They played Tuesday night at Campbell. First, they got the win last Monday over Winthrop, by 40 points, which is exactly what you want to see. Their game against Mercer Thursday was canceled, but they played their first road game at Campbell up in Bowie Creek, North Carolina. And this was much more of a challenge than they were thinking, but UCF gets out of there with a very tight victory. 62-60 was the final for UCF. Didn't really shoot particularly well in this game, 38%, 22 of 57. But the key for the Knights, they had double figures from Layla Jewett, who had 12 points to go with 6 assists and 3 rebounds. Destiny Thomas had not a great shooting night, but still came up with 9 points and 9 boards. Her 9 rebounds led the team. 10 and 5 for Taylor Gibson.
Have a double. She was awful.
Yeah, I know. And Sierra Godbold, who I thought was a real key. She has settled in nicely as the point guard. I think it's probably a matter of time before maybe we see her running the show in the starting lineup. I don't know, but 4 of 7 from the field, 1 assist, 9 points, 3 steals. Defensively, she was everywhere. And they got the job. And as close as this game was, UCF kind of went back and forth. They had a lead at the end of 3, but then Campbell, who's in the Big South now. Both these teams used to be in the A-Sun back in the day. We're old enough to remember that. Mm-hmm. Came back and made it a game. But I think it's, regardless of the opponent, I'm still a fan of getting a road win against an unfamiliar foe, in a tight game. Like that to me is like the ultimate, character building game, right? Is winning on the road in non-conference play in a close game.
Yeah, and no, all those are great observations. And I got to tell you, first of all, the surprise that jumps off to me is Taylor Gibson, the Michigan transfer, handling her business. Her first point game in double digits, sharing time down low with Desto. Brianna Hardy came on big their last game against Winthrop to open the season. So it's good to see that their post players, you can get double digits from anywhere on the floor, and that's what Tia Messer's looking for when she's coaching her strategy, no question. The other thing I got to point out too is for those fans that were super concerned, about 62-60 and all that. Listen, if the opposing team shoots well, which Campbell clearly did, you're gonna see situations like this where they're gonna battle more than normal, right? Yeah. This team, they didn't put up 33-point attempts like they did last time. They only shot 12, but only hitting 4 of them. They were at least smart enough to move away from it. That I will say. Yeah. For my money, in these games, when you don't have a team that can physically dominate as much as others, like they lost the rebounding battle, for example, Jeff. When's the last time this team has done that? So I say all
that does concern me, though. I mean, to be fair.
Yeah, and it is concerning, but what you could also be uplifted by at the same time, and like you said, listen, I think it's more that Campbell came on hot late than anything else, and they were able to hold them off. But in a group like this that has the injuries that they do, right? Nay Hutt and Asia Todd, we could go down the list of injuries that they have, and they're still pulling out wins that are gritty like this when maybe they weren't the more physical team. If you're a fan following this, you are not used to this stat line, but the fact it still comes away a W, credit to Tia Messer, credit to this coaching staff, credit to the players' resolve to still get the job done.
Yeah. Well, now they come up with starting off here again, or they're coming back home, I should say, on the schedule. Louisiana Monroe comes in on Tuesday. And this is a ULM team that's completely retooled itself. Last year they were bad, 4-25, 0-14 in the Sun Belt. But this year they are coming off of a couple of interesting results here. I pulled up their schedule because I wanted to catch up on it. They're 2-1 on the year right now, and they just hung 103 points on Centenary. Yes, I know it's Centenary, but that's a lot of points.
Centenary more and sedentary. Anyway,
yeah. They also played Louisiana Tech, lost by 15 at home, but and they have one more game on Saturday against Central Arkansas before playing UCF. So this is another opportunity to try and, kind of organize some things, figure out a couple of units. I think that, but so far, I want to get your take on, how Coach Messer, in your opinion, has worked to get this team kind of just kind of get the pieces together and figure out, what they have, because I think this is going to be a recurring theme as we head, through, November and into December. They do have Auburn, Seton Hall, Tennessee, but, coming up next week, Samford, Southeast Missouri State, Sam Houston, and then they have Idaho State, Elon, Texas Southern before conference play begins. So, some sort of figuring things out games before, sandwiched around some big opponents, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, all I can tell you is with the program, the state that it was in, with Destiny Thomas looking like Will Smith in the last episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? No one else in the apartment but her that was a starter, taking nothing away from Ashton Verhulst, please, or Asia Todd or Layla Jewett or any of them, but like amongst the starters. And for Satia Messer to come in to not only snag quality Big 12 recruits, but then also get freshmen, Jeff, that are seeing time in the starting lineup like Brianna Hardy, or that are finding double digits like Sierra Godbolt, who returners abound, have said is one of the tougher players at the team, and yet she's also one of the few that are below 5'10". Figure that out. It's kind of like, I'm not saying diamond battles, but that's the mold, right? But listen, the recruiting is just where it starts, Jeff. I can't tell you necessarily the secrets. I'm not in practice, but what I can tell you is Coach Messer and her staff and the ladies themselves, credit to them, have found chemistry. They move the ball pretty well. The big concern obviously has been turnovers. They lowered that number in this past game with Campbell. 14 is probably still a bit high for a coach's taste, but it sure beats 20, so they're trending downward there. And to your point, Jeff, this is about ladies settling in at their spots. Again, Godbolt, Hardy, both freshmen, they're not both freshmen. They're both new players is what I should say, newer players, and still making the impact that they are. I mean, beyond impressive. And honestly, even if they had lost 62-60, looking at the stat line, you kind of expect it, right? But still, nonetheless, turning this into a win is a big deal. And yeah, Sierra is a freshman. I misread that, but good. Yeah. I was right the first time.
Well, I mean, I think that's important is, when you have a group that is so new, you have to refigure out how to win all over again.
It's so new, Jeff. And there's, as far as talent goes, I think they're far more versatile than last year's team. Say what you will, but the group, the ladies you were trying to replace in Brittany Buckets, Diamond Battles, and Tay Sanders, and of course, Masni Kaba. Listen, you replaced some of them, not completely, like that's not a carbon copy, but Maya Burns is Tay Sanders. We're good there. I can make an argument that their 3-point shooting threat might be the best in the program if it keeps up. I don't know the history well enough to declare that, but I'm pretty confident they're going to compete.
It's been a minute.
So, right, exactly. And again, listen, for a fact, if you listen to me at all preach about 90s basketball, that I love Coach Abe's style. But Coach Messer coming in, I'll put it this way, and I don't say this to demean Johnny Dawkins, but he had told us that he was looking for versatile basketball last year. Some nights he got it, some nights he didn't. But I can guarantee you with Coach Messer, what she's doing for this team is the same vision that Coach Dawkins has, and these ladies are putting it together in such a fashion so far.
Great segue, by the way, because we move over to the men's side, and they're 2-1 right now. Coming off of two big wins since our last show. Remember, we were all worried after the UNC Asheville game, the double overtime loss, 98-95. What do? They come in on Friday and beat Florida State at home, 68-54. By the way, Darren Green Jr. and Florida State, I should mention. And using a formula that you mentioned, in talking about the women, versatile basketball players, right?
Right.
Once they figured it took them a little bit. It took them that Asheville game to kind of figure things out, and then they got tired, and I think that's what happened. But in this game, 3 players in double figures: Jalen Young, Taylor Hendricks, Ethel Horton. 7 of 15 from three-point range, but most importantly, the rebounding. Out-rebounded Florida State 52-22. In fact, UCF had 52 points and held Florida State to, or had 52 rebounds, I should say, and held Florida State to 54 points. So they had 2 fewer rebounds than Florida State had points. And then offensive rebounds, this is where UCF really cleaned up, 24-7 on the offensive glass. They held Florida State to 56 field goal attempts compared to 63 for UCF. And that made up for a 20-13 turnover margin, by the way. Mm-hmm. Darren Green Jr. for Florida State had some moments, but I thought he came out a little tight and struggled at times. He was still 7 of 14, 3 of 6 from three-point range, 17 points to lead Florida State. But I was interested to see like how UCF would play him, and it felt like the new guys on the roster, Kyle, were like going at him rather aggressively.
Oh, yeah. And listen, Coach Dawkins would agree that he was an element of focus. And first of all, let's be clear. If anybody was worried after Asheville as a UCF fan, you're wrong. With everybody they were missing, the fact that game turned close for a program that's probably one of the most underrated of the teams that caused upsets that season opening night. Let's be clear. # Stetson.
Yeah. Look at Florida State's record. Stetson's, by the way, has knocked off Florida State and USF.
Yeah. I mean, well, knocking off USF is a little less impressive, I'll say. But, they're
not supposed to beat USF.
They're not supposed to. That's fair. I'll go with you on that. But listen, man, if you thought this team was going to come out missing both DJ and CJ, right? Mm-hmm. CJ Walker and Darius Johnson, which, by the way, I could tell the PA announcer was really excited when he got a chance to announce CJ Walker's name for the first season. He put a little bit more funk on that one. And hey, I appreciate it. But CJ Walker coming back for that FSU game, Coach Dawkins said that while he only played so many minutes, he and Ty Freeman both, who would actually return to the lineup that night. It wasn't as much their on court presence as the shot in the arm it gave the team. But going back to what you were saying about Darren Green, listen, Coach Dawkins was warning these cats. You need to get a handle on him. He will Dan Marley shoot your butt. And it's okay. That part is my words, but strategy. And listen, he still hit one of them from the U in the logo.
Yeah.
And talking to Coach Dawkins about it, he was glad it only happened once, Yeah. So, but the other impressive thing, Darren Green Jr. leading among scorers for FSU. Granted, they're down 3 big men. And their coach, Leonard Hamilton, I wanted to give him a hug after his post game, having to lament those injuries and how much trouble it's going to be this year for them. But give it up for Jalen Young, the guy from the JUCO transfer who was supposed to be the backup point guard, found his legs in a special way that night, matching Darren Green Jr.'s 17 points.
And really orchestrated the offense extraordinarily well. I thought. He's really been in this first 3 games. I think he's really been a pleasant surprise and a real find. which takes us to Monday night. And sometimes these kinds of games always kind of worry me because you're coming off a big emotional win over a big opponent.
Mhm.
And then 72 hours later, you're playing Western Illinois. All right. Easy sometimes to read your own headlines. Don't worry about it. We're gonna throttle these dudes. Well, UCF took care of business, which I thought showed a lot of maturity. I'm trying to count it up. Everybody who played scored a point, including Huwara Kulnikro, a former student manager. He worked with John Whitford in the equipment office. Found his way onto the team because we were a little shorthanded.
A little bit.
All right.
Little bit.
Came in, scored his first college points, hit his first college field goal, finished with 4 points, including a 3, which completely erupted the arena late in the game.
Oh yeah, the bench
leading scorer. Everybody scored. Leading scorer for UCF was CJ Kelly, who he looked really uncomfortable in the Asheville game.
Mm-hmm.
A little more comfortable in the FSU game. In the Western Illinois game, he was in a flow. In 21 minutes, 7 of 12, 3 of 7 from 3-point range. 17 points to lead UCF. CJ Walker again came off the bench for 17 minutes, 8 points. Ty Freeman also came off the bench to add 3 on 15, but 9 for Michael Durr on 4 of 6 down low. Brandon Suggs, I thought, played particularly well, caused a lot of havoc on defense.
It was the highest rebound grabber amongst non-post players for the record.
Yeah. And even though Taylor Hendricks only had 6 points, he contributed 3 blocks in the game. And this was I think it was just another good team win. Maybe they didn't do it over, they weren't overly impressive, in terms of looking at the box score, but they still beat this team by, 33 points.
Yeah, a good problem to have, right? Oh, we slacked off, 33-point win. And listen, CJ Kelly said it himself, he kind of matched your sentiment of a team concept and this being a collective much more than a group of individuals, like we observed at times with UCF last year. And it wasn't so much, some people would say it's a personality issue. I know CJ Walker said in the offseason at ACC Media Day that there are discipline concerns. But what I will say is even if that group was tightened up and buttoned up as much as this group at least appears to be, the idea of them playing collective basketball was far more difficult, right? Because, Darius Perry operates with the ball. He's a guy who attacks with the ball. He moves away from it well enough. And when they got comfortable in the 2-point guard set, it was great. You had a Brandon Mahan who was used to being a guy who was a top shooter and just wasn't feeling it when he was healthy. And of course, listen, you got a dude like Darren Green shooting like Dan Martley. I mean, you go and chuck it up in there and every now and again, and you're going to be happy about it more often than you weren't. Matter of fact, the only bad shooting game I remember him having was his final one, unfortunately, in the conference tournament against Memphis. But this group isn't like that. I feel like we all know that Taylor Hendricks is a true freshman, is a force, and probably the main force on this team despite his youth. Yet his score totals have gone down while the team's performance has gone up. Does that mean Taylor Hendricks has done worse? No, he is a grown man. And I don't care if he's a freshman. You and I were talking about.
And by the way, that's not that hard to pick out on the film, right? If I'm scouting UCF, I'm looking at that kid. We need to stop.
There's a reason why they were 6 scouts at FSU, UCF. And I'm fairly certain Taylor Hendricks was among them. But okay, then Michael Durr had his highest point total with 9. And I'm not saying he can't score. I'm just saying he's not there to do it first. You mix Sheik and Bakejean with Jameer Reynolds from last year. Boom, you got Michael Durr. That's a win. And I wasn't prepared for Chu to contribute all that much. Yet here we go. He has a hot tune under his belt. Yeah,
hot tune. Yeah. We even saw Tierno Silla come in and cause a little havoc late in the game, which I thought was really interesting to watch.
He got a reaction. And just when you thought the bench couldn't erupt more for a guy getting action and doing well, here comes Pooh doing his thing, man. By the way,
congrats to Pooh, man. I'll tell you.
To the PA guy for practicing that name really hard and getting it right when he got to the floor. I know somebody was intimidated by that.
But it's, I thought showed a lot of maturity coming back after that win. It feels like, if I could compare this year's team to last year's team,
I don't know how you would, but try.
I feel like if last year's team beat Florida State, they would have struggled against Western Illinois. I don't know why that is.
Possible.
But they wouldn't have curb stomped them like they did.
And the reason for it is I don't know that they had the physical prowess. Taking nothing from CJ Walker, he is but one man. While Bakke was a force, he's not somebody. He had a little bit more finesse than I would like to see. It would have been closer with Western Illinois. They would have still physically dominated. Don't get him twisted. But like the way Durr handled business there, it's. I appreciate the comparison. I just don't know that they're comparable. And listen, again, taking nothing away from last year's team. I know there were a lot of unforeseen circumstances and injury shenanigans and trying to recover from COVID. And all of that stuff was still a thing at that point too. So, Coach Dawkins did what he could to put the group together. You got guys changing their minds about, whether they're going to transfer or not. And that could have only been more difficult. Right.
Yeah.
So, credit to both coaches for showing that the transfer portal can definitely giveth as much as it could taketh away. As a wise man on the show once said, right, Jeff?
Portal giveth, the portal taketh away. So that takes us to this tournament out in the Bahamas. The UCF is playing 2 games in, and the situation is that the Bahamar Hoops Bahamas Championship, which is in Nassau, it's going to be televised on CBS Sports Network. UCF is playing Oklahoma State Friday at 7, and then they play either DePaul or Santa Clara, depending upon the results, on Sunday, either at 4:30 or 7. So we can't really scout that one, but we'll go ahead and take a look at the Oklahoma State game. Oklahoma State picked 5th, tied for 5th in the Big 12 this year, behind TCU, Texas, Kansas, Baylor, tied with Texas Tech. Their best player coming into this season is Avery Anderson III, senior guard, who is named to the preseason All Big 12 team. Also, you got to look out for Musa Cisse, who's back once again. Here comes another test against a future conference opponent, Kyle. So watching this game, taking a look at where UCF is going to be, what are you looking for in this matchup against Oklahoma State?
Less sloppiness, in coach's words, not mine. I thought it was very interesting after the Western Illinois game, a game, as you mentioned, they won by over 30, right, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, I thought our offense looked a little bit sloppy. I was dumbfounded.
Well, he wasn't wrong. They turned the ball over a lot. I think it was 20 turnovers in that game.
Oh, no, not in the Western Illinois game. It was only 8. They didn't.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking, the previous 2
I'm thinking Florida State.
Yes, you are. Right.
Yes.
And I think the other one was, Asheville was 23, but that's double OT. So whatever. Call them 220 turnover games if you
got to grade that one on a curve.
Correct. But the punchline is a severe drop, and coaches talking about sloppy offense. I was a little confused, so I asked him post game, what was it that was sloppy? And it was the little things, right? Players were posting too high. He gave a very, very specific example that they don't have a high post 15 feet up for a post player in the playbook. And yet there he was catching the ball 15 feet high, right? Yeah. Those little details, I think they're looking to correct. And I'll put it this way, to coach's credit, he didn't make any excuses. Well, we're missing Darius Johnson, but this team has come to accept that that's just the facts of the case. They're not using it as an excuse. And if a team is said to be matching the identity of their coach, Coach Dawkins is pushing them hard nonetheless. All great. DJ Hurts, that sucks. No one cares. I'm going to grade you on that curve. I'm going to push you. I don't care if you're a JUCO young man at point. I don't care if you're a freshman who is a man-child, but nonetheless one that's going to be a focal point, or you're a transfer from another school who's coming off the bench to handle business. You can pick out players who I think I mean in those descriptions, and the only one that's obvious in my mind is Taylor Hendricks, because they have several guys that fit those molds. So Dawkins said outright, listen, you either want a coach that will push you when you win or comfort you when you lose, and I'm here to push our guys to be the best basketball players they could be.
Yeah. Interesting note about this Oklahoma State game. And I mentioned Musa Cisse, who is honorable mention preseason. If his name sounds familiar, it should, because he played for Memphis in 2020, 2021, and was the American Athletic Conference's freshman of the year in 2021 for Memphis. Entered his name into the NBA draft to be evaluated, decided to withdraw his name, and then went into the transfer portal, where he eventually landed at Oklahoma State. Last year was the co-Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. So, again, this is going to be a really interesting matchup between. I think this is going to be a big test for Michael Durr, for sure.
Absolutely. As a squad, I feel like they have enough size to compete, where last year's team, once you get past Bakke, it's a little small. Again, no offense to CJ Walker, of course.
Right. Cisse, by the way, attended St. Benedict's Prep. My dad went to St. Benedict's Prep in Newark for a little bit.
Kevin Bacon rules apply, 6 degrees.
Yes, I know. So, all right. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. What other things are you going to be watching out for here, Kyle? Because you're going to be at the football game on Saturday as well, alongside our very own Eric Lopez, who'll be filling in that seat right next to you, since our boy Statboy Drew's up in Cleveland for some reason. Taking care of some kind of business up there. I don't know, probably having to do with the Browns. But
okay, Browner.
Yeah. But yeah, busy weekend for all of us coming up, right?
Oh, to say the least, man. And listen, the good news is the business gets handled early in the morning. I know the students overall don't like early games, but listen, for one, stadium coffee somehow happens to be delicious. Maybe it's because I need it more. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a nice day. Everything goes well. You get it over with early. Everything doesn't go well. You could start, going through your sorrows earlier in the day. You've at least had mimosa theoretically if you're tailgating. I'm kidding. But listen.
Not I. No. I got to be aware of my surroundings.
Listen, it's not all about you, PA guy.
Fair point.
No, joking. Hey, listen, you think right. You think I could go in there and talk to Gus? Not about my wits, please. No, man. But listen, joking aside, like this is going to be. I think it's going to be an interesting outing to see how Navy attacks UCF's offense and John Rice Plumlee. If you get annoyed by UCF hater fans quickly, I'd stay off of Twitter in this one.
Evergreen tweet.
Yeah. Right. But with all that in mind, I think this will be a fun outing. I think this is a good experience for the team to face Navy, and to play in the kind of hard-nosed game that you're going to see against beef and technique in in a air quotes power conference, right?
All right. So I'll see you Saturday.
You will. Shirt and tie, all of that. Next to I haven't shared a press box with Elo in years, man. That'll be fun.
I know, it's been a minute. You gonna dress in pink again? Oh my God.
Why you gotta hate the pink tie, man?
I don't hate the pink tie.
Okay.
I don't hate the pink. I'm just saying, like, every week. I mean, it's,
Listen, there are multiple weeks in October. Okay, and October is cancer awareness.
We need to break out. Okay, you're absolutely right. But I will say, listen, I'm looking forward to the student of the game fall wardrobe here. Temperature's going back down. I like to see some fall shades,
Here's the
maroon.
One guarantee you won't see. Okay, there you go.
Oh, my old school NBA tie. Yeah. God, I love that old Nets logo. All right. VSOTG on Twitter. Student of the game, Kyle Nash. Thanks for joining us, bud.
Honor, joy, and privilege. But until next time, class dismissed.
Eric Lopez is back in a second. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Don't go away. We're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff and Eric with you as we do a quick little rundown as we're sort of like winding down like the fall part of the fall sports equinox here. And women's soccer is what we're going to lead with here, because Eric, we gotta pour one out, because what a clutch victory for Tiffany Roberts-Haydak's crew in the first round of the NCAA tournament against NC State. Scoreless after one half. They fall down 1-0 to North Carolina State on a penalty kick. Then they get a PK of their own, and Daria Raja'i buries it in the 72nd minute to tie it up. They go through the 2 overtimes into PKs. And this is where things, got really, I mean, it's PKs, right? I mean, it's always just, you never know what you're going to get. But in the shootout, it didn't start out all that well because UCF missed their first opportunity. But then when they were down 2-1, all of a sudden, they make 4 in a row, and Caroline Delisle came up huge in those last 2 frames, making 2 clutch saves, and UCF advances past NC State, and they now head out to Los Angeles to play UCLA, who's the number 1 seed in their region. They will play at 7 p.m. Pacific. That's 10 p.m. Eastern time out at Annenberg Stadium in LA on Friday, November the 18th. Obviously a bummer that now they have to travel from Raleigh back to Orlando and back all the way out to LA. Although they've been out west earlier this year for that scoreless.
They'll get much warmer weather.
Against Utah Valley. Yeah, it'll be nicer. It's a little chillier. It's not that bad. It's actually quite nice right now over here in Orlando. But this is the opportunity that they set themselves up for, right? So what do we know about UCLA, and what have you seen, particularly from the first round game, that gives you cause for optimism that perhaps this team could get to the Sweet 16 for the second time under Coach Sahadak?
Well, the optimism is you've got a great goalkeeper that can keep you in matches. I mean, Caroline Delisle had 8 saves in the victory against NC State. Was fantastic in penalty in the PKs. It'll go down right up there with Aline Reyes back in 2011 in Gainesville against North Carolina, winning in PKs to get to the Elite Eight. That's right up there. So that gives you a chance. And then you've got, UCF is a really good defensive team backline. That's going to be key because UCLA is explosive offensively. UCLA is one of the favorites for the national championship. They're right up there with the Florida States there.
Yeah, 18-2 on the year this season. No draws.
18-2. A lot of these talented players for UCLA have been to the College Cup. A lot of them obviously recruited and coached for Amanda Cromwell, who was the former UCLA head coach, who obviously is not the head coach this year. Obviously, we all know the reasons why. We don't need to get into all her going to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, we're not going there.
So they have a first-year head coach who was the longtime Stanford assistant. So to me, I think the key here is how does a first-year head coach for UCLA handle a second-round NCAA tournament match and with an experienced roster that's been there. However, UCLA last year was upset in the first round of the tournament. I think if UCF could get an early goal, I think the pressure would be on UCLA. So it'll be an interesting matchup, dynamic programs. And, for UCF, you get a tournament win for the first time since 2014. You're playing with house money here. You're the underdog. If you could keep it close, maybe send it to peak overtime or PKs, you could pull the upset, and then all of a sudden, anything's possible. The winner of this match will take on the winner of Northwestern and Vanderbilt on Sunday in Los Angeles, regardless of who wins. So, get off to a good start and play well, I think will be the key for UCF. You don't want to play from behind against the Bruins.
This, to me, feels like one of those games where you're really going to find out the character of your senior group, right? And in particular, I'm looking at 2 players. I'm looking at Kristen Scott and I'm looking at Caroline Delisle. If UCF gets past UCLA, it's going to be, in my opinion, largely because those 2 played their guts out. We saw how the offense really. We saw how the offense really moved through Kristen in the NC State game. Even though she got a few shots. She set up a few opportunities, and I think one of them in particularly the one that led to the PK. And then obviously we talked about Caroline, but it's like, this is the moment when your senior leadership takes over, puts the team on their back and says, let's go. We can do this.
Well, and they're going to need others to step up because I think UCLA is going to try to take Kristen Scott away. And so you have somebody like Daria Rajaei, the midfielder, steps in, hits the PK to tie the match up against NC State, gets the game-winning PK. scoring those goals. You need other players to step up. A Diana Martin, players like that could create pressure on UCLA, because UCLA is going to try to take Kristen Scott out early. So to me, those are the keys in that match. But, big shout out to Daria. That's a signature moment for her career that she's gonna be remembered for those PKs. Goes down as one of the great midfielders ever, and they stepped up. That's a senior right there. Daria's a senior. Defensively, they're really solid. I think it's a heck of a matchup. I think UCLA got a tough draw here, but UCF's got to get off to a good start. You don't want to fall behind early, fall in a goal, trying to chase them like you did against NC State, because UCLA is an explosive front-running team. If they get ahead, they usually score a second and a third goal. That's their game. But if you keep it tight, if it's scoreless, let's say, in the 70, 75 minute, they're going to get a little tight over there. So I'm very intrigued by this matchup. Obviously, a late start on a Friday night, but I don't expect a ton of crowd there, because the football team is going to be playing USC the next night. There's always things to do in Los Angeles, as Murphy used to tell us on the podcast. So I'll be curious. It's not the toughest of atmospheres, but they're a loaded team, UCLA, obviously. I think, I'll say this, I think the winner of this match could easily end up in the College Cup, and that includes UCF. I think if UCF somehow gets past UCLA, I think they will beat the winner of the Vanderbilt Northwestern match, because I think at that point that momentum just kind of flows. But easier said than done. This is a stacked UCLA team. They are one of the national title favorites.
Yeah. Last time UCF got this far was Coach Sahedak's second year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
2014. They got to the Sweet 16, lost to the eventual national champions Florida State in Tallahassee, there by a goal. Who knows? They may end up losing to the eventual national champs this year. Because UCLA's that good. So something about UCF teams getting paired with national champions. It happens in every sport, it seems like.
Funny how it works out like that.
But look, I said, huge to get a big win on the NCAA tournament. This has been a big year for women's soccer. We'll get into it once their season ends, but I think they checked a lot of boxes with a lot of momentum heading to the Big 12. And like I said, they're going to play loose, play with confidence out west, and put the pressure on UCLA. Don't, make UCLA play on their heels and feel the pressure of, we're trailing in the NCAAs again. We got to avoid getting knocked out.
Yeah. Last time, UCF and UCLA have actually played once before, 2010, in the NCAA tournament second round, interestingly enough. But that was in Madison, Wisconsin, and UCLA won 2-1 in that game.
But
But
Amanda Cromwell led UCF team against Jill Ellis of UCLA, who would be the eventual U.S. World Cup coached a few years later on that. What a year for Tiff. Helps as the assistant on the U.S. national team.
Mm-hmm.
Helps them qualify for the World Cup next year and the Olympics in 2 years by winning the tournament up in Mexico. She's got to be coaching friendlies during the year, so Tim Sahadak fills in as the head coach. They win the conference regular season title. They win an NCAA tournament match, and then she's then going to obviously have the spring and next year get ready to go to the Big 12, and she's going to be the assistant for the World Cup next year.
Busy. She's going to be racking up a lot of frequent flyer miles, I'll tell you that.
It's a heck of a year. It's a heck of a year.
Wow. Another word out of soccer, too, we wanted to pass along congratulations to Sean Johnson, who, as you know, from, looking at our coverage, started his college career at UCF, played 2 years, then went into the pros as part of a program from Adidas, and made his way into MLS, worked his way up the ladder, and has been a part of the U.S. men's national team system for a while. But just recently, of course, last year was the winning goalkeeper for NYCFC in captaining them to the MLS Cup, and this week was named to the U.S. men's national team for the World Cup in Qatar. He is one of 3 goalies out there for U.S. Matt Turner, who plays his club soccer at Arsenal, and Ethan Horvath of Luton Town. Sean is the only MLS goalkeeper that's going to be out there. He's 33 years old, so he's kind of the elder statesman out there. But I don't know about you, Eric, but I would not be surprised if we see Sean out there for the U.S. men's national team. I think that Turner's going to be the main guy. But what an achievement for Sean Johnson. If I'm not mistaken, Is he the first former UCF
first men's player to play on
on the US on Team USA in the World Cup, right? Wow.
Yeah, he got in there. The big story there is that Stefan was the guy who started most of the qualifying matches, didn't make the team for the US team. Sean beat him out. We'll see. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what US will do. Some say he could be the 3 string. Some say he could be 2. It depends on how. I think a lot of it's going to depend on how the US does. Obviously, believe it or not, folks, the World Cup starts Monday for Team USA. They'll play Wales 1:00 Monday. Then Black Friday they'll take on England, which will likely be the most watched soccer match, at least opening round soccer match, maybe in years here in the States. So
probably since the last time the USA played England, I think a couple World Cups ago.
2010 was the last they played there in South Africa. So it's kind of weird. We'll see how the World Cup, but there'll be people watching. But yeah, great for Sean. He's deserved it. He won the the MLS Cup a year ago with New York City FC. They got to the semis. I would argue he's been the best goalkeeper in the MLS the last couple of years. So I think he's earned that slot despite his age. I think it's great. So I'm glad he's got the opportunity. He is the first men's player to make the World Cup. Obviously, Michelle Akers, among others, has played in the women's side, but that's a big bonus.
Kim Wyatt also, I think, played USA women's team. But yeah, Sean, the first former UCF Knight to be on the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup. Interestingly enough, his USMNT record, obviously, he's been, like we said, he's been a part of the system for a while. He has made 10 appearances, 5 clean sheets for Team USA, but they were all in friendlies or qualifiers. This is his first match this will be his first action actually in the World Cup. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be, this is going to be exciting to see. I did a feature on Sean when I was working in the video department long ago when he was heading into his sophomore year, and he was just 19 years old. And wow, I mean, just a remarkable. I'll see if I can find that. See if I can post it too, because he was a remarkably mature person then, out of Atlanta originally, and Brian Cunningham recruited him. He came down, for a team that often struggled, at times to score goals. He really did a fine job during those years of keeping UCF in games, and we've seen him really blossom as a professional, and it's congrats to Sean. He really deserves it. Last but far from least, we want to finish strong here as always, and we got to talk about UCF volleyball as they continue to just roll through the American, and yet they find themselves in a peculiar position of still being in second place. Here's the story for UCF volleyball. They're 23-1, 15-1 in the conference. They've won 11 in a row since their lone loss at Houston. They during this 11 match win streak, they have lost a grand total of 3 sets, and they come off this past week with a sweep at South Florida. So UCF finishes their time in the American Athletic Conference having never lost to South Florida in volleyball. Never lost, not once. And then they sweep Cincinnati on Sunday at home. And so the Knights have 4 matches left to go. They're on the road this weekend at ECU on Friday, at Temple Sunday, before they come back home the day before Thanksgiving, Wednesday, 5 p.m. against Tulane. And then the day after Thanksgiving, 5 p.m. against Houston. And that is the regular season finale, likely between the 2 top teams in the American, and also for ostensibly, if both these 2 teams went out, it would be for the conference championship. But got to take care of business in the first 2. But what's the situation right now of volleyball, Eric? Because this is a critical moment for them, where kind of like football, right? The pathway is laid out for you. You just have to execute. But at the same time, you have a gigantic bullseye on your back.
Well, I mean, you're playing to get yourself a lot at stake here. Obviously, you mentioned the road matches. The question's going to be, does Houston win out as well? Houston's hosting Memphis Friday night, then hosting SMU Sunday. on senior day.
That's going to be their biggest challenge, by the way. Is
probably left. They play at Tampa against USF on Wednesday before
that
coming
won't
to
be
UCF.
A challenge.
So if both teams win out, you're going to have Houston will have won at least a share of the regular season title. UCF at that point, to win the automatic bid, quote, would have to beat Houston in 3 sets or beat them in 4 sets and then win by more than 4 points in that match. That could get really convoluted. But even bigger than that, you have the conference championship at stake. You have possibly your final statement to host for the winner of that match. I think if you look at where we're at, Selection Sunday is November 27th. It's right after the UCF Miami basketball game that day, by the way. Big day on the U.
Yep.
Here are the teams that I think are locks to host: Texas, Louisville, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, San Diego, Stanford, Nebraska, Oregon, Florida, Minnesota, Creighton, Kentucky. I think those 13 are a lock. And Baylor, I think, is a win away from pretty much being a lock to host. I think there's 2 regional host spots available. And I think it's between UCF, Houston, Marquette, Rice, Georgia Tech, Penn State, and USC for 2 host spots. And remember, they are seeding 32 teams this year, not 16. That's a new experiment they're doing. And that's going to be significant, as I'll explain in a moment. But I think the winner of UCF Houston on Black Friday, if both teams win out, I'm assuming they're all winning out prior to that, the winner of that match puts themselves in the mix to possibly get one of those 2 host spots. I think the loser of that match is out as far as hosting. I don't think there's room for both unless some other crazy stuff happens, but the winner with some help could possibly host. So if you're UCF, even if you don't win the automatic bid, you still have to win the match if you want to have a chance to host. Otherwise, that will be it as far as your home season. You're going to be going on the road. And then that becomes an interesting scenario because, in years past, we would say, well, they're going to Florida. That's not going to happen this year because of the way the seeding works. UCF will likely be the way they seed it is 32 teams, 1 through 8 through each regional, which means I think UCF is either going to be a 4 seed hosting or they're going to be a 5 seed on the road. And that means they could be playing at Baylor, for example. I know NCAA.com just came out with their projections. They have UCF going to Baylor, which would be funny since that's going to be your future Big 12 matchup there. I think UCF could end up going to Kentucky. UCF could end up going to Penn State if Penn State ends up hosting, or Marquette if Marquette ends up hosting. Now, if you're a UCF fan, you need to root for Creighton. Now, Creighton is playing Marquette this weekend. Creighton beat Marquette in the first meeting. They need to beat Marquette again, and then they're going to play in the Big East tournament more than likely. You need Marquette to get swept by Creighton. If that happens, that takes Marquette out of the equation, I think.
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to
because they're back-to-back at 13 and 14 in the RPI,
correct,
and UCF is 15. So
correct, right. And the problem is UCF's going to take a hit playing Temple, ECU, and Tulane prior to that Houston match. Yeah. The good news for them is Georgia Tech does not have a top 25 win. They have one last chance to do that. They're at Pittsburgh November 23rd. If you're a UCF fan, you're rooting for Pittsburgh to beat Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Rice is in the Conference USA tournament. You want Western Kentucky to just keep beating Rice. That probably takes Rice out of the equation. USC is at Oregon, at Washington. That's 2 top 25 games. You're rooting against USC there. The biggest threat here is Penn State. Penn State is hosting Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue. All top 25 games. If Penn State can win out, I think Penn State could get a slot to host there. So that's why this is a huge week for UCF. Win out, and you're in the mix to host probably as a 16 seed. You're probably going to get paired with the team that's going to be the favorites for the national championship in Texas. Where does that sound familiar? Big 12 favorite to win the national title as a 16.
No way. You don't say.
Yeah. And there's a chance, Jeffrey, that if UCF hosts, they may have to host Penn State or USC as a 2 seed in Orlando, with probably Florida State or Miami as a 3 seed, and then Florida Gulf Coast if they win the ASUN tournament. Guess who they're coming where? They're coming here to Fort. That's if UCF hosts.
I don't mind as long as we're, if we host, right? I don't mind that as long as we're healthy, because, that's the other thing that's coming. And I wanted to go back and see, this is where I think the drama as we head into this final week is really taking place. The tiebreaker, like you said, and I think we have to go over this in detail because it's not too complicated. I just pulled it up on the American site. So remember, if teams finish with identical records, they effectively share the conference title. But as far as who gets the automatic qualifier bid, this is how it breaks down. First in an event of a two-team tie, results of head-to-head match record during the season. All right. Well, if UCF beats Houston, then that's tied. Results of head-to-head set record during the regular season. Number 2, Houston beat UCF in 4. So UCF would have to, in order to get to the next tiebreaker, UCF would have to beat Houston in 4 or sweep them in order to take it. All right. Number 3, head-to-head point differential through the season. This is where it gets really interesting because as I'm looking at this Houston UCF matchup, it was, I'm going to do the math here. Houston was +2, UCF was +1, then Houston was +2. So UCF was +1 and then Houston +2. So Houston +1 and then +3. So it's Houston +4. Basically, you add up all the points in the matchups and see who comes out on top. That's razor tight. That's 4 points separating UCF. So imagine, Eric, the drama that we might be in store for. If it gets to this point, both teams win out, like you said, first things first. Then they get to Orlando on Black Friday. Then they get to a 4th set. UCF's up 2-1. And in that respect, UCF then would have to beat Houston by 5 points or more in order to.
Well, it depends how much.
Right?
Depends what the margin is going into that. If you're up 2-1, how much did you win in the first?
Well, yeah, that's
that.
So, but like you're gonna have people like I can easily imagine Aaron Olson sitting on the bench next to us.
Well, both sides, right, both sides,
keeping an eye on like we have to do this, we have to do that, and. I'll tell you, this is one of those things where, and of course, Todd and myself debating this has been like a long running gag in the history of our podcast, right? But like, this is where like the conference tournament is like, it would be a lot simpler.
Yeah, but it actually wouldn't help either team. This actually works out better because you probably, for example, like, I don't know what your format would be for the conference tournament, but for example, one of them would have to play a Wichita State probably or a Memphis, which would hurt your schedule strength. So
the other would have to play SMU.
Right. SMU would be the team that would benefit right now from the conference tournament.
That's true.
They would be the one. And now, if you're a UCF fan, this is weird. If you kind of want Houston to win out, if they're going to lose to SMU. Don't lose to Memphis. Don't lose to USF, because the reason I say that is you want Houston to be in the top 25 RPI, so you get credit for that win.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose to SMU, that actually would help you because SMU would probably crack the top 50 RPI,
right,
which would also help. So
it becomes a less bad loss.
Correct. So if you want to make it an easier winner take all match, root for Houston to lose to SMU. Otherwise, you might as well then win against Memphis and USF, because UCF needs Houston win in the top 25. They need Kansas to stay in the top 25. Kansas is 24. So it's going to be tight. The thing that could hurt UCF and cost them a hosting spot if they don't host is their schedule strength, which is approaching 100. That is not great.
No. So, and largely because of the American itself.
The American bottom.
It really has been a bad year for the American. It's UCF and Houston, then SMU, then everyone else.
Right. They're the 8th rated conference. The Big East is 7th. That's who they're competing with, potentially, with Creighton and Marquette as host sites. So those are the scenarios. But I think, as Todd would tell you, is the key is just come out and play well and get that momentum into the tournament and then see what happens. They're a fresher team, healthier team. But that Friday match you could have your first ever top 25 matchup ever at the venue between UCF and Houston. A conference championship on the line. A host spot perhaps on the line, senior day, which could or may not be McKenna Melville's last match as she chases 2,500 kills.
Mm-hmm.
That could happen on that night. there's a lot of drama in this match, a lot of suspense, which we'll get into more next week as we get closer to that date. But obviously, as you mentioned, can't have any slip-ups, because if UCF if they were to get upset in any of the next 3 matches, that is
all that goes away.
It's gone.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The interesting thing about McKenna, and I do want to get some information get some information to you guys about McKenna as we're really getting in on MacWatch. We said that this would be happening, and just to update you on her career numbers, she's at 2,437 career kills, which is 13th all time in Division I NCAA volleyball history. So that puts her 44 from the top 10 all time, regardless of scoring era, 63 from 2,500. She's also 3rd all time in the 25-point rally scoring era. Interestingly enough, the only 2 players ahead of her in that particular breakdown are Tyler Henderson of Tulsa, who played against UCF for a number of years, for 2009 to 2012, and was just a remarkable player at 2,525, and Jordan Thompson at 2,664. So that gives you an idea of the rarefied atmosphere that McKenna Melville is in right now. And she's averaging Eric, 5 kills per set right now.
Yeah,
so
5 and change, top 3 among the nation's leaders, and it's just an amazing season. She'll be an All-American again. The question is, does Amber Olsen maybe get consideration as an honorable mention?
She should.
She will likely win Setter of the Year for the 2nd year in a row. By the way, add more to this Houston match. You could have the Player of the Year, the Setter of the Year, and the Libero of the Year on the same court.
Yeah.
Because Houston has the best libero in the league and one of the best liberos in the country as well. And Houston's very good defensively, and that's why they've been the only team in the American to beat UCF the last 2 years.
Yeah. And let's not forget, and it's credit to Houston, man. They're going to be tough to beat, I think, in the Big 12 as well when they get there. Both these squads, I think, there's going to be some adjustment like we've talked about when they get to this point. But I think that adjustment, the more and more I think about it, it will be less and less painful over time, because we're seeing both of these teams really load up on the size, particularly Houston.
Well, Houston's got a veteran team like UCF, so both of them will be a little younger next year. Dave Rear has done a heck of a job there since he came over from Arkansas State when he worked for an AD named Terry Mahajer. How about that? But he was the head coach there, but he's done a great job there. And look, talking to people, both from the Houston side, as I prepare for that match, as well as just people in general, there's going to be a lot of Houston fans coming to that match because they've got some players there from the state of Florida. They've circled this match. They feel remember last year, they played in Houston, the last match of this regular season. UCF came from 2 sets down to beat them in 5 sets. A lot of people in Houston didn't forget that. They felt if they would have won that match, they would have been in the NCAA tournament. They felt that cost them. So this has been building for over a year for them. They want to take down UCF. We'll see what happens. We do know this, as you mentioned, the conference championship will be going to the Big 12 there. And that, by the way, Big 12, number 1 RPI conference this year, right now, over the Big 10.
But first things first, got to handle ECU in Greenville on Friday. UCF's when was the last time UCF lost to ECU? It was back, I think, might have been
pre-McKenna,
27 in November of 2017, a 4-set loss. The last time UCF lost to ECU, that was in Greenville, and this match will be in Greenville. So losing to them in the venue is irrelevant at this point. But and then don't forget Temple, obviously, which will be Sunday at 1 p.m. Both those matches we are expecting will be televised on ESPN Plus. I don't see a link up there, but they should be. We know that Tulane on Wednesday, the 23rd, and of course Houston Friday, the 25th, will be on ESPN Plus, and you will be on the call for both of those, right?
Yep, 5:00 Eastern for both. Make a note of that. Wednesday, due to the men's basketball game. You're going to be next door.
I'm going to be next door. Yeah.
UCF Evansville men's hoop doubleheader there. 5 o'clock, and then Friday, the Houston match. I'll be joined by our good friend Etchy Tanner Goker will be joining me for the 2 matches there. How about she wins the lottery ticket? Yeah, she gets to work the lottery ticket. She gets the Houston match.
Excellent. Well, I mean, she's fantastic. Right? Yeah, I loved working with her. I know you. Have you guys worked together before?
Never worked. We'll get to meet in person.
She's
finally.
Great.
Finally, we've spoken millions of times, but we've joked about this. We actually spoke this week on the phone. This will be the first time we meet in person. Will literally be Wednesday next for the match.
Gotcha. All right, you guys are going to do great. It's going to be fine. So that pretty much wraps us up here. What was the other thing I wanted? Oh yeah. One last little statistic I wanted to drop to everybody. Hitting percentage and opponents hitting percentage for UCF. We're seeing a real historic thing here for them. First in the American in both. Second in the country in team hitting percentage at 319 behind Texas. 11th in the country in opponents hitting percentage allowed, just 152.
That hitting percentage, by the way, would set the school record, which was held in 1993. I think UCF hit 312 that year. That's the school record. That could be broken. A 30-year-old record could be broken by this offense. I think that's the best offense they've had. I know Todd has said he doesn't think it's necessarily the best overall offense. He thinks it's the best out-of-system offense he's ever had. But I think when you have players like Abby Hansen and Dylan in the middle he could score from, I think that's a big part of this. And we'll get into this more as we get to the tournament. I think UCF felt like if we get more offense from the middle, that could be the difference between the second round and the Sweet 16 for them this year, regardless of where they play.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right. So that'll do it for us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. This is the busy time of year for us. It's like this 10 days that goes from like 1 week before Thanksgiving through Thanksgiving weekend, right? So we have a lot that we're going to be covering for you in terms of basketball, obviously volleyball. Soccer goes on Friday. The overall schedule for UCF sports is going to be absolutely wild.
Well, you got men's basketball Wednesday against Evansville after they come back from the Bahamas with volleyball at the same time. You got volleyball.
And by the way, don't forget that men's basketball is also going to the Bahamas this weekend at Oklahoma State, like we mentioned. And for those 2 games to face Oklahoma State, they're facing Oklahoma State and then either Santa Clara or who was it? There's the other team. It's either Santa Clara or
CBS Sports Network will be your network for those basketball games.
Yeah. It's gonna be super busy. Obviously, we have Senior Day coming up for football against Navy. That's gonna be huge. And then either DePaul or Santa Clara at the Bahamar Hoops Bahamas Championship, which has become an annual tradition for UCF. Women's basketball against Louisiana Monroe on Tuesday. And then day before Thanksgiving, man, we got, a volleyball and basketball, like you said, kind of back to back there. It's going to be wild. It's going to be a busy
and
time.
Then volleyball Friday, then obviously they got the USF football game in Tampa on that Saturday. Mm-hmm. Women's basketball is going to be hosting a tournament that weekend. And then UCF Miami men's basketball Sunday, the 27th at 5 o'clock on ESPNU, followed by the volleyball selection show.
Lock in, kids. It's going to get
wild, holiday?
Man.
What are you talking
when
about?
When are we going to record this podcast next week? I think we're going to have to record on Tuesday, right?
No later than that, I'll tell you that.
Like maybe Monday. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about the Niners or the Cardinals on Monday night. It's in Mexico. It's not even in the States.
It might be interesting. They might get like 110,000 people in that game. It might be a record, right?
I think they're gonna be focused on the World Cup starting over there.
That's also true. Well, we have to monitoring Sean Johnson for that. So we got a lot of stuff going on. So. Thanks again to Kyle Nash for joining us, the SOTG on Twitter for the student of the game. Don't forget to follow him. Follow Bryson at It's Bryson Turner. Follow Andrew Glukov at StatBoyDrew. Thanks again to Noah and Derek, our amazing photographers. And also we got a couple other photographers who are coming into the mix in a little bit. You'll see their work in the next several weeks. And thanks also to UCF's sports information communication staff for helping us out as they always do in this wild time of year. As busy as it is for us, it's 10 times busier for them. So we thank them for all their support as well. We also thank you, the fans. Make sure you follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com on Twitter, UCF_Banneret. I'm at Jeff_Sharon. Eric's at Eric Lopezilo. We're on Instagram, Black and Gold Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where Eric, you will be captaining night shift after Navy. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I'll be on site with Kyle for the night shift there. Bryson will have to run it from the headquarters,
Bryson's running it from the mothership. Yeah. And you and Kyle will be in site, country, so to speak.
Yeah, and then we'll probably it's gonna be kind of unique. Looking forward to that early morning with both teams running the ball as much as they should. We should be done. That game should end by about 1:45, 1:50. That'd be nice. Nice lunchtime. Beautiful. I love it. Let's play more 11 a.m. games, please.
The two top rushing teams in the country, not in the country, but it's certainly in the Americas.
Certainly in the Americas, yeah.
I never thought I'd see
under 10 passes. There you go. Over under 10 passes.
I know. Well, I mean, I don't know about that. But again, we won't rehash what we already talked about. But we thank you as always for listening. And make sure you follow us. Like I said, UCF Banneret_SBN on Twitter, blackandgoldbanneret.com. You are home for UCF Sports on the SB Nation. For all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, for Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon, and thank you for listening. We will catch you for night shift after UCF and Navy. Go Knights! Charge on as we head toward Thanksgiving week.